I was reading the comments on a Facebook post about an old woman whose children had abandoned her at a rest stop, and every single person was furious. Animals. Who does that to their own mother? I hope they rot. 7,300 comments. 7,300 strangers ready to burn the world down for a woman they'd never met. I was reading those comments while sitting in the exact gas station where my son had left me 3 hours earlier. My name is Joanna Washington. I'm 64 years old. I spent 32 years as a pediatric nurse at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. I've held the hands of babies who weighed less than a bag of sugar. I've told mothers their children wouldn't make it through the night. I've been spit on, thrown up on, cried on, and prayed with in 14 different languages. And at 2:47 on a Saturday afternoon in July, my only son Darius drove away from a Shell station off Highway 441 in Jasper County, Georgia, and left me standing there with $43 in my purse, a half-eaten pecan bar in a Ziploc bag, and the sweater my granddaughter Jasmine bought me last Christmas. In my wallet, I still had the Mother's Day card Darius gave me 14 months earlier. Inside it said in his handwriting, "Mom, you are my rock. I owe you everything. Magdi." I should have seen it coming. The signs had been there for months, maybe years. But when you've raised a child for 38 years, you don't want to believe he can become a stranger. You want to believe that the nights you stayed up, the 2 shifts back to back, the nursing paychecks you stretched like taffy. You want to believe all of it meant something permanent. But here's what Darius and his wife Tasha didn't know when they drove off and left me at that gas station. I wasn't just some 64-year-old woman with $43 and nowhere to go. I was the only person alive who knew the truth about the bank account they'd been hiding. I was the woman who'd signed a lien on their house because my late husband's attorney insisted. I was the woman who had spent 3 decades documenting every single breath of every single child on my ward. Because when you're a black nurse in a southern hospital, your notes are the only thing that protects you when something goes wrong. And over the next 72 hours, my son and daughter-in-law were going to learn something every pediatric nurse already knows. You do not corner a woman who knows how to stay calm while a child is dying in front of her. You will lose. Let me tell you who I was before all of this. Not who they thought I was, who I actually was. I was born in 1962 in Macon, Georgia, to a woman named Beulah Mae Carter, who cleaned houses in the white part of town, and a man named Joseph Carter, who welded rail cars until his lungs gave out at 61. My mother had 6 children. I was the 5th. I was the first one to finish high school. I was the only one to go to college. Spelman College, class of 1984. Nursing. My mother sold her wedding ring, the real one, not the costume one she wore on Sundays, to help me pay the deposit on my first semester. When I told her I wanted to pay her back after graduation, she took my face in both her hands and said, "Joanna May, you pay me back by becoming who you're supposed to be. That's the only debt I'm collecting." I met Harold Washington my junior year at a church picnic in East Atlanta. He was a history teacher at Frederick Douglass High School. He had one of those laughs that came up from his belly and filled a whole room. When he proposed, we were sitting on a bench at Piedmont Park, and he said, "Joe, I'm not going to be rich, but I will never ever leave you alone." He kept that promise for 31 years. Then, on a Tuesday morning in April of 2019, he had a stroke in our kitchen making grits, and he died on the floor before the ambulance reached our street. I buried my husband on a Saturday. I went back to work on a Monday. That's what black women of my generation do. We grieve while walking. After Harold died, I kept living in our house in Kirkwood, a neighborhood on the east side of Atlanta. We'd bought it in 1992 for $87,000 when everybody said the neighborhood was transitional, which was just a polite way of saying black. Now the same house, according to the Zillow estimate I refused to look at more than once a year, was worth about $485,000. I didn't care. I cared that Harold's fingerprints were still on the banister. I cared that the hydrangeas he planted along the side of the house came up blue every May. I cared that the kitchen still smelled like him when the humidity was right. My son Darius was born in 1987. He was my miracle. I'd had 2 miscarriages before him, and the doctors told me not to expect more. When he came out screaming, with a full head of black curls and his daddy's wide-set eyes, I cried so hard the delivery nurse thought something was wrong. The memory I want you to hold, the one I kept coming back to over and over in the nights that came later, is this. Darius was 9 years old. He had asthma, the bad kind, the kind that puts a child in the hospital twice a year. One February, he had an attack so severe they had to put him on a nebulizer for 4 straight days at the same hospital I worked at. I just finished a 12-hour shift in the pediatric ICU. My feet hurt so bad I couldn't feel my toes. But I walked down 3 floors to the children's ward and sat next to my son's bed, and I sang him the song my own mother used to sing to me when I was sick. His eye is on the sparrow. I sang it quiet, over and over, until he finally closed his eyes. Right before he fell asleep, he reached out and took my hand. His little fingers were warm and sticky. And he said, "Mama, when I grow up, I'm going to buy you a big house, so you never have to worry about nothing ever again." I held on to that sentence for 29 years. I held on to it like it was proof of something. I was wrong about what it was proof of. Darius grew up and became the kind of man I thought I'd raised him to be. He went to Georgia Tech on a combination of scholarships and my overtime. He got his bachelor's in computer engineering in 2009, right in the middle of the recession, and still managed to land a job at a small fintech firm in Midtown. By the time he was 32, he was making more money in a year than I'd made in any 3 years combined. He married Tasha Hollings in 2013. The wedding was at a vineyard in North Georgia. Tasha's mother, a woman named Cheryl, who'd been married to a cardiologist for 35 years, spent the whole reception looking at my side of the family like we'd wandered in off the street. My sister Ruth May, who runs a hair salon in Savannah and doesn't have patience for that kind of nonsense, leaned over to me at the reception and said, "Joe, that woman ain't better than us. She just thinks she is. There's a difference." I married Tasha into our family with an open heart. I really did. I was determined to be the kind of mother-in-law I'd wanted when I was a young bride. Warm, welcoming, not too close, not too far. I told myself that whatever Cheryl was or wasn't, Tasha was the woman my son had chosen, and that was enough for me. Jasmine was born in 2014. Andre in 2018. 2 of the most beautiful children God ever made. Jasmine had my mother's eyes, deep-set, observant, older than they should be. Andre had Harold's laugh. The first time I heard that little boy laugh, I had to leave the room. For the first 10 years of Darius and Tasha's marriage, things were good. Not perfect, no marriage is, but good. Darius called every Sunday. Tasha sent me photos of the kids every week. I drove out to their house in Smyrna for every birthday, every Easter, every Thanksgiving. Tasha and I weren't close exactly, but we were cordial. We were civil. We were family. Then, somewhere around the spring of 2024, things started to shift. It was small at first. The kind of small you only notice later, when you're lying awake at 3 a.m. trying to rewind the tape in your head. The first thing I remember, the first thing that didn't sit right, happened at Christmas 2024. We were at my house. The kids had just finished opening presents. Tasha followed me into the kitchen while I was cleaning up. She handed me a silk scarf in a box from Neiman Marcus, gave me a quick hug, and then said, almost casually, "Mom, Darius and I are going through a little bit of a rough patch financially. Nothing serious, but I just want you to know, in case you notice anything different." I remember saying, "Oh, sweetie, I'm sorry. Anything I can do?" And Tasha smiled, a specific thin smile, and said, "Oh no, we'll figure it out. We always do." And then she walked back into the living room and started laughing at something Darius said. I filed it away. I didn't think about it again for weeks. The next flag was in February. Darius came over one Saturday to help me fix a leak in the bathroom sink. He left a stack of his mail on my kitchen counter. I think he'd picked it up from a P.O. box earlier that day. I saw an envelope from the IRS sticking out of the pile. I didn't read it. I didn't even touch it. I just noticed. My son is a grown man. He has a right to his own business. That's what I told myself. Then, in March, Jasmine, my 11-year-old granddaughter, the observant one, came and sat down next to me on my front porch while her parents were inside talking to each other in low voices. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said out of nowhere, "Grandma, why do Mommy and Daddy fight about money so much now?" I wrapped my arm around her. I said, "Baby, grown-ups argue sometimes. It doesn't mean anything." She was quiet for a minute. Then she said, "They don't argue like grown-ups. Mommy called Daddy a loser last week, and Daddy didn't say anything. He just sat on the stairs. I didn't know what to do with that. So I did what I'd always done. I changed the subject. I told her about the hummingbird that had come to the feeder that morning. She let me change the subject, but I could tell she didn't really want me to. The last flag, the one I should have paid attention to but didn't, came from my sister, Ruth May. Ruth May has run a hair salon in Savannah for 26 years. A lot of my friends in Atlanta, and some of Tasha's, drive 3 hours down the coast just to sit in her chair. Tasha had been to Ruth May's salon 3 times over the years, always with a friend, always when she was down visiting one of her cousins. In April, Ruth May called me. I remember she was using her serious voice, the voice she usually reserved for phone calls about funerals. "Joe," she said, "I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to get mad at me for telling you." "What is it, Ruthie?" "Tasha was in the shop yesterday. She was getting her hair done by one of my new girls, didn't know I was in the back, and she was talking to her friend about you." I sat down. "About me?" She said, and I'm going to quote her, so you hear it the way she said it. She said, "My mother-in-law has a house worth almost $500,000, and she lives in it by herself. All that equity just sitting there. It's such a waste." The kitchen was quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming. "Joe, you still there?" "I'm here." "Baby, I'm not trying to stir the pot, but that girl is looking at you like you're a resource. You be careful, you hear me?" I laughed. I actually laughed. I said, "Ruth, you've been doing hair too long. You're making up a whole movie out of one sentence." Tasha is a real estate agent. She looks at every house that way. It's what she does for a living. Ruth May was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "All right, Joe, I hope you're right. I want to tell you something honest. Looking back now, I see myself in those months the way you see a person in a horror movie, the one where the audience is screaming at the screen, 'Don't go in that room. Don't open that door,' and the person in the movie can't hear them. The person in the movie just keeps walking forward, smiling, certain she knows her own house. I was that woman. I couldn't hear myself. Here's what my life looked like in the weeks before the highway. I want you to see it the way I saw it. Small, ordinary, full. Every morning I got up at 6:15. I made coffee in the same Mr. Coffee machine Harold bought me in 2011. I sat at the kitchen table and read 1 chapter of Proverbs and 1 Psalm. That's been my routine for 40 years. Then I went out into the backyard and watered Harold's hydrangeas, and I talked to him while I did it. "Harold, you should see how tall Andre is getting. You should see the way Jasmine draws. She's got your hands, baby. She's got your hands." On Tuesday mornings, I went to the Senior Women's Quilting Circle at Ebenezer Baptist Church. We've been doing it for 11 years. Miss Deborah Reeves, who lives 2 doors down from me and has been my closest friend since 1997. Miss Loretta Jenkins, whose husband was one of the first black firefighters in DeKalb County. Miss Patrice Wells, whose hands are so arthritic she can barely hold a needle anymore, but she comes anyway because she says if she stops, she'll die. We make quilts for the babies in the neonatal unit at my old hospital. I could go on about those women for an hour. They're the best kind of black women. The kind who don't tell you who they are, they just show you. On Thursday afternoons, I went to Kroger. I always bought a pint of vanilla bean ice cream because Andre likes it, and a pack of colored pencils because Jasmine always runs out, even though I never knew when I'd see them next. I kept the ice cream in my freezer for weeks sometimes. Miss Deborah teased me about it. "Joe, that ice cream gonna have grandkids of its own before those babies come eat it." On Sunday mornings, I put on one of 3 dresses. My blue one for ordinary Sundays, my cream one for communion Sundays, and my purple one for anniversaries. And I drove to Ebenezer Baptist. Yes, the Ebenezer. The one Dr. King preached at. The one that still feels like holy ground even when the AC is broken. I sat in the 3rd pew from the left on the aisle, because that's where Harold and I sat for 30 years, and I'm not about to let grief move me to a different pew. Pastor Elijah Brooks has been my pastor for 15 years. He's a tall man, thin, in his early 60s, with a soft voice that gets loud at exactly the right moments. After every service, he comes down the aisle and finds me and says, "Sister Washington, how's your week been?" And I say, "Blessed, Pastor." And he says, "Glad to hear it, sister." That's our Sunday. That's been our Sunday. On Saturday nights, I sat in my living room, in the leather chair Harold bought me for my 50th birthday, and I called my grandchildren on FaceTime. Jasmine usually answered. Andre would lean into the frame and yell, "Hi, Grandma," and then run off. Jasmine would show me whatever she'd drawn that week. Sometimes Tasha walked past in the background. Sometimes Darius came on for a minute. It was never long. It was always enough. My pension from the hospital was $3,200 a month. The life insurance policy Harold had left me, $175,000, was still sitting in its original account. I hadn't touched a dollar of it. I was saving it for emergencies, and when the time came, to help with my own funeral so my son wouldn't have to. My 401k had $142,000 in it. The house was paid off. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't scared either. I tell you all this so you understand what my life was. It wasn't a tragedy waiting to happen. It was a small, full, honest life. Saturday, March 15th, 2025. I want you to remember that date because I remember it. I remember it the way you remember the last photograph of a person you loved. It was a beautiful morning. The dogwoods were starting to come in along my street. Miss Deborah had walked by with her little Yorkie, Frankie, and we'd waved at each other through the kitchen window. I was about to start on a batch of pecan bars for Sunday's coffee hour when the phone rang. It was Darius. His voice was off. I knew immediately. 38 years of being somebody's mother teaches you to hear fear in your child's voice before he knows he's afraid. "Mama," he said. "Mama, I need to come over. I need to talk to you. It's something big. Can I come over right now?" "Of course, baby. Come on." I hung up. I finished making the pecan bars. I put on a second pot of coffee, the good kind, not my weekday kind. I took the little china cups out of the cabinet, the ones Harold's mother gave me as a wedding present, with the blue flowers on them. I straightened the doilies on the side tables. I picked up 2 pairs of Andre's socks I'd been keeping on my dresser since his last visit and put them in a basket by the door. My son needed me. That was the only thing in the world that mattered. I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror before he arrived, rubbing a little coconut oil into my hair, looking at the gray at my temples, and saying quietly to my reflection, "Whatever it is, Joe, you can handle it. You have always handled it. That boy needs his mama." That was the last moment of my life when I still believed the word family meant what I had been raised to believe it meant. It was the last normal morning I would ever have. In 72 hours, I was going to be sitting in a Shell station off Highway 441, reading Facebook comments from strangers about a woman who wasn't me, and learning, for the very first time at 64 years old, that the love I had been pouring into my son for 38 years had been, for at least some of those years, something I was being charged for. But I didn't know any of that yet. On that Saturday morning, I was just a mother, making coffee for her boy. Darius pulled into my driveway at 10:47 that morning. I remember the time because I was watching the clock on the microwave. I'd never been the kind of mother who stares at the clock waiting for her child to arrive. Darius was 38 years old, and I'd long since stopped treating him like a boy running late from school. But something in his voice on the phone had put me on edge, and I kept glancing up. He came in without knocking, the way he always does. He hugged me at the door, a real hug, the kind he used to give me when he was a teenager and didn't think anybody was looking. He smelled like cologne and coffee, and underneath that, the faint stale smell of a man who hadn't slept. I held on to him a little longer than usual. "Baby, what's going on?" I said. "Sit down. Let me pour you a cup." He sat at the kitchen table, in Harold's old seat, the one with the cushion that was worn flat from 25 years of my husband eating grits there every Sunday morning. I set a pecan bar in front of him on a small plate. He didn't touch it. And then my son, my 38-year-old son, the man I'd watched become taller than me when he was 14, the man who'd delivered his daughter's eulogy to his own life in the form of a wedding toast just a few years earlier, put his face in his hands and started to cry. I hadn't seen him cry since Harold's funeral. "Darius, honey, what is it? What's happened?" "Mama," he said, and his voice broke in the middle of the word. "We're about to lose everything." I sat down across from him. I kept my hands flat on the table so he could see them. 32 years of pediatric nursing teaches you that when someone is falling apart, you have to be a place they can land. You don't interrupt. You don't react too fast. You just hold the space. He told me the story in pieces. Tasha had been laid off, he said. The real estate market had collapsed under her feet. Her firm had let go of half its agents over a 3-week period. She'd been too ashamed to tell anyone. Not her mother, not her sister, not even me. They'd been putting everything on credit cards, trying to keep up the mortgage and the kids' school activities. Andre had just started an after-school program that cost $400 a month. Jasmine was supposed to start a summer art camp in Savannah that they'd already paid the deposit for. Now they were 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank had sent a letter. If they didn't come up with $95,000, to cover the back payments, the late fees, the property taxes, and a cushion of 6 months. They were going to lose the house. "We've been trying to figure it out on our own," he said. His eyes were red. "I didn't want to come to you. I swore to myself I'd never come to you for money again." I didn't say anything about the cologne. I didn't say anything about the watch on his wrist that I'd never seen before, some kind of silver and gold thing that caught the light every time he moved his hand. I didn't say anything about the flag my sister had planted in my head in April. I'd packed all of those observations into a locked room somewhere in the back of my mind, and I had thrown away the key. My child was at my kitchen table crying. That was the only fact in the world. "How much do you need?" I said. He looked up at me like a drowning man looks up at a rope. 95, he said. 95,000. I know it's a lot. I know it is. Mama will pay you back. Every penny, with interest, whatever you want. Just, please, don't let my kids lose their home. I stood up. I walked around the table. I put my hand on the back of his neck, that specific place where I used to pat him when he was a sleepy toddler. And I said, "Darius, that's what I have it for. Family takes care of family." He sobbed into my stomach like he was 9 years old again. "Here is where I need you to understand something. If the story ended with me just giving him the money, that's where it would end. I would have given him the money, no paperwork, no questions. That's who I am. That's who I've always been." But Harold, rest his soul, had a best friend named Gregory Foster. Gregory is an estate attorney in Decatur. He and Harold met as freshmen at Morehouse in 1975, and they stayed thick as thieves for 40-plus years until Harold died. After the funeral, Gregory sat me down in his office and he said, "Joe, I made Harold 2 promises before he died. One was that I'd look out for you legally. The other was that I wouldn't let you make any big decisions in the first year without running them by me first." For 6 years, I'd kept my end of that promise. I'd called Gregory before every major financial move, when I considered refinancing the house, when the hospital offered me an early retirement package, when I thought about selling Harold's car. Small things, too. He'd laugh at me and say, "Joe, you don't need to call me about whether to change insurance companies." And I'd say, "Harold told me to call, so I'm calling." That Saturday afternoon, after Darius left, with the promise that I'd have an answer for him by Monday, I picked up the phone and I called Gregory. I will never, for the rest of my life, forget the sound of Gregory Foster's voice when I told him what my son was asking for. He didn't say anything for a full 10 seconds. Then he said very carefully, "Joe, I want to help you help your boy, but I'm going to need to do it my way. Can you come into the office Monday morning?" "Greg, it's my son." "I know it is. I know it is, baby. I'm not telling you not to help him. I'm telling you that if you love that boy, you help him the way Harold would have helped him. You hear me?" I heard him. Monday morning, I sat across from Gregory in his office. He had a yellow legal pad in front of him and a pen in his hand, and he didn't smile at me once the whole meeting. He walked me through what he called the minimum acceptable structure. A formal promissory note, a 24-month repayment term at 0% interest. He said 0% was my right as a mother, but he wasn't letting me do anything less formal than a written note. And the part that I know now saved my whole life. A lien on Darius and Natasha's house in Smyrna, filed with the Cobb County Clerk of Courts, recorded publicly, with a standard acceleration clause. If they missed a single payment by more than 30 days, or if they attempted to sell or refinance the property without my written consent, the full balance became due immediately, and I had the legal right to force the sale of the home to recover it. "Greg, that feels like I don't trust my own child." "Joe," he set his pen down. "I have been doing this work for 31 years. I have watched more black mothers lose their retirements to their grown children than I can count. Harold sat right where you're sitting, 2 weeks before he died, and he told me to protect you from your own good heart. Now, you can walk out of here and do this without the lien. I will still love you. I will still be your lawyer. But if you sign it without that lien, you are going against the last direct request your husband ever made of me, and you're going to have to carry that." I signed it the way he drew it up, every page. On Wednesday of that week, Darius came over and signed his copy. He read it carefully. He paused at the acceleration clause, and his jaw tightened, just for a second, and then he picked up the pen and signed. Tasha didn't come with him. "She's got the kids today," he said. "I'll bring her signature by tomorrow." He brought it over the next morning. Her signature looked like it had been done in a hurry. I wired the $95,000 that afternoon from the account Harold's life insurance had been sitting in for 6 years. $95,000 of my dead husband's love, transferred in under 2 minutes to a joint checking account at Wells Fargo with both their names on it. Darius hugged me. He cried again, but softer this time. He said, "Mama, I won't forget this. I won't ever forget this." I believed him. Exactly 8 days after I wired the money, Miss Deborah Reeves knocked on my front door. I was in the kitchen washing collard greens. It was the Sunday before Easter. I came to the door in my apron, wiping my hands on a dish towel, expecting her to ask to borrow an egg or tell me the latest about Frankie's ear infection. Deborah wasn't smiling. "Joe, can I come in for a minute?" "Of course, Deb. You all right?" She came in. She sat at the kitchen table. She didn't take off her coat. She had her phone in her hand, and she was holding it strangely, face down, like it was something she didn't want to look at. "Joe," she said, "I need to show you something, and I don't want to show you, but if it was me, I'd want somebody to show me." "Deborah, what is it?" She turned the phone around. It was Tasha's Instagram account. I'd seen Tasha's Instagram before. She'd shown me pictures of the kids from it a few times, but I didn't follow it. I wasn't really on Instagram. Deborah was, because her youngest granddaughter lived in Charlotte, and that was how she kept up with her. The post at the top of Tasha's feed had been put up 10 days earlier, 2 days before Darius came to my kitchen table and cried. It was a carousel of photographs. Tasha in a white bikini on a beach, laughing. Darius in swim trunks, holding Andre up in the air against a turquoise ocean. Jasmine riding a horse through the surf. A photo of a hotel infinity pool with 4 glasses of tropical drinks lined up on the edge. A shot of all 4 of them at what looked like an expensive dinner, Tasha's wrist covered in gold bangles I'd never seen before. The caption said, "Turks and Caicos with the loves of my life. Family time is priceless. So grateful for every blessing. Hashtag blessed beyond measure. Hashtag island life. Hashtag Washington family." The photos had been taken between March 1st and March 7th. Darius had knelt in my kitchen and begged me for $95,000 on March 15th. I sat down slowly in the chair opposite Deborah. I put the dish towel on the table. I stared at the phone. "Joe," Deborah said very softly. "Baby, I didn't want to be the one, but I saw it this morning and I couldn't sit on it. How much does a trip like that cost?" "To Turks and Caicos for a family of 4 at what looks like that resort. $10,000–$15,000. Easy." I didn't cry. I don't think I even blinked. I was in pediatric nurse mode without having decided to be. I was watching my own chest go up and down like I was somebody else's patient. "Joe, I hate to ask, but did you lend them some money?" "Yes." "Recent?" 8 days ago." Deborah closed her eyes. She said, "Sweet Jesus." She reached across the table and took both my hands in hers. Her hands were warm and dry, and I could feel every one of the rings she always wore. Her own wedding band, her mother's, her grandmother's. "Joe, you listen to me. I don't know what this is yet, but don't you do anything rash. Don't you call that boy today. You let me sit with you a minute. You let us think." We sat there for I don't know how long. I kept staring at the photo of Tasha in the bikini. I kept thinking about the tears on my kitchen table. I kept thinking about the Rolex, because of course it was a Rolex, I saw that now, that had been on my son's wrist when he signed the promissory note. I thought, there has to be an explanation. Maybe the trip was booked and paid for before Tasha lost her job. Maybe Tasha had kept the job loss a secret from Darius, too. Maybe the bangles were costume jewelry. Maybe. I thought about how many times in a day the word maybe can hold a whole house up. Before Deborah left, she said one more thing. She said, "Joe, I need you to do something for me, and I need you not to ask me why. I need you to write down, on paper, every dollar you have ever given that boy and his wife. Every single one you can remember. Loans, gifts, down payments, plane tickets, medical bills. Put dates next to them if you can. And when you finish, I want you to put that list in an envelope, and I want you to bring it to me, and I'm going to keep it at my house." "Deb, what are you—" I said, "Don't ask me why. Not yet. Please, Joe, just do it." I did it. It took me 4 hours sitting at the same kitchen table, going through 6 years of my bank statements and check registers. When I was done, the number at the bottom of the page, not counting the $95,000, was $184,600. I sat there looking at that number until the light in the kitchen went gold and then gray. I didn't eat dinner. I didn't call Darius. I put the list in a manila envelope, sealed it, wrote the date on the front, and walked it over to Deborah's house at 9 o'clock at night. She took it without a word. She hugged me. She said, "We're going to take this one day at a time, Joe." I walked home in the dark. The dogwoods were blooming. My hydrangeas were coming in blue, the way Harold liked them. I looked up at the stars over Kirkwood and I said out loud to my husband, "Harold, I think I've done something stupid. I think I have done something very, very stupid." The next 8 weeks were a slow-motion education in how you can know something and refuse to know it at the same time. I didn't confront Darius about the trip. I told myself a dozen different stories about it. I told myself that maybe it was Tasha's mother's money. Cheryl had that cardiologist money and was the kind of woman who liked to throw it around. I told myself the timing was a coincidence. I told myself that even if it wasn't, my job wasn't to police my grown son's vacations. I told myself a lot of things, but my body knew something my mouth wouldn't say. I started sleeping badly. I started waking up at 3 a.m. and sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the dresser where Harold's wedding ring still sat in a little dish. Then Andre turned 7. His birthday was April 19th. Every year since Andre was born, Tasha had invited me to his birthday party. Every year I had shown up with a wrapped present and a homemade cake, red velvet for Andre, because he was a Washington, and red velvet is a Washington thing. Every year. That year the invitation didn't come. I waited. I assumed it had gotten lost. I called Tasha 2 days before the 19th. "Tasha, sweetheart, when are y'all celebrating Andre's birthday? I want to make sure I have my cake ready." There was a pause. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. Didn't Darius tell you? We decided to do a small thing at Cheryl's house this year. Just my side. It's been a lot, with everything. And Mom offered to host and take the pressure off me. We figured we'd do a separate thing with you and the Atlanta family later in the summer." "The Atlanta family? Oh, of course, that makes sense. I knew you'd understand. Love you, Mom." I hung up. I looked at the pan of red velvet batter sitting on my counter that I'd already started mixing. I baked the cake anyway. I took it next door to Deborah, and we ate it with coffee on her porch, and I didn't say a word about it, and Deborah didn't ask. Easter came. Tasha's family hosted. I wasn't invited. Mother's Day came. Darius sent a text message at 9:12 a.m. that said, "Happy Mother's Day, Mama, love you. We'll call later this week." He didn't call. By the end of May, I had gone 9 weeks without seeing my grandchildren in person. I had been out to their house twice. Both times, Tasha had met me at the door with some reason I couldn't come in. Once it was Jasmine being sick. Once it was a work call she was on. Both times, I'd left a bag of stuff on the porch. Books, snacks, a new sketch pad for Jasmine, and driven back to Atlanta with my stomach hurting. On a Saturday morning at the very end of May, my sister Ruth May drove up from Savannah. She'd been coming up every few weeks since Harold died because she didn't like me being alone for too long. She was staying with me for the weekend. She'd planned it weeks in advance. Ruth May is 58. She is 5'2". She weighs 112 pounds soaking wet. And she is the most dangerous woman I know. Saturday afternoon, she said, "Joe, let's go for a drive. I want to see the new Target they put up in Smyrna." "Ruthie, there's a Target right here in East Atlanta." "I want to see the Smyrna one. Come on." I should have known. Ruth May never just wants to see a Target. We got in her car. She drove us up I-285. She took an exit I didn't recognize at first. And then, quite deliberately, she turned down a street I knew by heart. Darius and Tasha's street. "Ruthie, what are you doing?" "Hush, Joe. I just want you to see something. Don't say a word." She slowed the car as we approached their house. There was a sign in the front yard. A big red and white sign. Professional. With a headshot of a smiling real estate agent on it, a woman I didn't know, and in large letters, "For sale, $619,900. Ruth May pulled over to the curb across the street. She turned the engine off. She didn't look at me. She said, "I saw it on Zillow 2 nights ago. It went up on the market 9 days ago, Joe. I wasn't going to say anything over the phone." I stared at the sign. I stared at my son's house. The house that was currently the collateral on a $95,000 lien in my name, filed at the Cobb County Courthouse, which he and his wife were legally prohibited from selling without my written consent. and I watched a couple with 2 small children walk up the driveway and go inside for a showing. Ruthie, I know. Ruthie, they can't sell this house. I know, Joe. There's a lien. Gregory filed a lien. I know. That's why I brought you here. I need you to see it with your own eyes before you pick up that phone. I sat there in the passenger seat of my sister's Buick for 20 minutes. I watched 2 more families tour the house. I watched the smiling real estate agent, whose name I later learned was Ashley, shake their hands on the driveway. Then I took out my phone and I called Gregory Foster. It was a Saturday. He answered on the second ring. Joe, Greg, they listed the house. How much they asking? $619. There was a pause on his end. Then Gregory said very quietly, Joanna, I need you to come to my office Monday morning at 9 a.m. Bring the envelope Deborah's been keeping for you. How did you? Deborah called me last week. She didn't tell me what was in the envelope. She just said you might need me sooner rather than later, and would I please pick up the phone when you called? I closed my eyes. My sister reached over and took my hand. Greg, I said, is there any legal way they could sell that house without me finding out? No. The lien is recorded. No title company in the state of Georgia would touch that sale without clearing it with you first. Whatever they're planning, Joe, it's not legal, or it's not what you think it is. What does that mean? That means somebody is either lying to them about what they can sell, or they're lying to somebody else about what they own. I don't know which yet, but I'll know by Tuesday. Ruth May drove us home. She made me eat a sandwich. She ran me a bath. She sat on the lid of the toilet while I soaked in the tub in my own bathroom, and she talked to me about nothing, about her grandchildren, about the new stylist she'd hired, about a man from church who was trying to take her to a fish fry, and she wasn't sure she wanted to go. She talked until my shoulders unclenched. That's what my baby sister did for me that night. She talked me back into my own body. 2 more pieces of information came at me that week. The first came from Pastor Brooks. He called me on Tuesday evening, which he'd never done in 15 years of being my pastor. Sister Washington, do you have a minute? Always, Pastor. I want to ask you something, and I hope you'll forgive me for asking. Is everything well between you and your family right now? I sat down. Why do you ask, Pastor? Sister, I don't like it to carry tales, but your daughter-in-law was at our women's fellowship 2 weeks ago. She'd come with one of her cousins, Sister Patricia's daughter. And I overheard her telling somebody that your family was about to relocate to Dallas. She said it like it was settled. I waited to see if you'd mention it, and you haven't, and it has been sitting on my spirit. Dallas. Not Atlanta, not Savannah, not anywhere Tasha had family. Dallas. Pastor, this is the first I'm hearing of any move to Dallas. He was quiet. Then he said, Sister Washington, I want you to come see me this week. Any day, any time. Bring your sister if she's still in town. I want to pray with you, and I want to put you in touch with somebody. Who? Brother Michael, over at First African. He does elder financial protection work. I think you may need him. The second piece of information came from Gregory Foster on Wednesday morning. Joe, I got the title pulled. The house was listed by an agent at the same firm Tasha works at. Whoever listed it either didn't run the title, or they knew about the lien and were planning to work something underhanded at closing. Either way, it's not going to work. I've already called the listing broker and put them on notice, very politely, that the lien exists and that any attempted sale will be blocked. The listing will come down within 48 hours. Your son doesn't know yet. Thank you, Greg. There's one more thing. Yes. The listing photos show the inside of the house. There's a photo of what looks like the kitchen. There's mail on the counter. One of the envelopes I could read part way. It's from the IRS. Joe, I want to pull their public filings. Do I have your permission to spend some money on this? Yes, whatever it takes. That night I called Darius. I hadn't called him in weeks. He picked up on the 4th ring. Hey, Mama. Hi, baby. How are you? I'm good. Busy. Andre's got baseball tonight. How's Tasha? She's good. Tired, but good. I took a breath. I said, Darius, are you keeping anything from me? The silence on his end went on long enough that I heard my own heartbeat in my ear. Then he said lightly as if it was nothing. Mama, what would I be keeping from you? Don't be weird. Just asking, baby. I love you, Mama. I gotta go, Andre's yelling. He hung up. I sat in my kitchen in the dark for a long time. And I thought to myself, That's the first time in 38 years that I've asked my son a direct question and felt in my body that he was lying to me. 2 weeks later, on July 11th, Darius called me. "Mama, hear me out. I know things have been weird. I've been an ass. Tasha's been stressed. We both have. I want to make it right. I want to do something nice. What if we did a family road trip this weekend? Just a short one, down to Savannah, see Aunt Ruth, eat some seafood. Let Jasmine and Andre spend some real time with their grandmother. What do you say? I'll drive. We'll make a weekend of it." I should have said no. I knew by then that something was wrong. I had the envelope at Deborah's house. I had Gregory investigating. I had Pastor Brooks's number for Brother Michael tucked into the Bible on my nightstand. I had every reason in the world to stay in my own house that weekend, lock the doors, and wait to see what Gregory's investigation turned up. But Darius said on the phone at the end of the call, "Mama, Jasmine's been asking about you every night. And I want to tell you something honest because I want to be honest with you through all of this." When he said that, something in me opened up that I couldn't close. I thought, he's my son. Whatever he's done, whatever he's doing, he is still my son. And if there's any chance at all, that this is him trying to come back to me, I have to give him that chance. Because I am his mother. And that is what mothers do. I said yes. I packed a small bag, 2 changes of clothes, my blood pressure medicine, a book. I baked pecan bars. I wrapped 2 presents, a set of watercolor pencils for Jasmine, a small foam basketball hoop for Andre's door. Saturday morning, July 12th, they picked me up at 8:30. Darius was driving. Tasha was in the passenger seat on her phone. Jasmine and Andre were in the back seat, each on their own iPad. I climbed into the 3rd row. I said, "Hi, babies." And Jasmine turned around and gave me the biggest smile I'd seen in months and reached back and squeezed my hand over the seat. Andre yelled, "Grandma, I got new shoes," and stuck his feet up in the air for me to see. Tasha didn't turn around. Darius caught my eye in the rearview mirror. He smiled at me, a tight, strange smile. "You comfortable back there, Mama?" "Yes, baby." "All right, let's hit the road." The first 2 hours of the drive were almost okay. I talked to Jasmine about her art. I listened to Andre tell me a very long, very confusing story about a YouTuber he liked. Tasha said maybe 15 words the entire time. Darius was quiet, focused on the road, I told myself. Just focused on the road. Around 10:30, we passed the exit for Macon. I said lightly, I was born about 20 miles from here. My mama had me at home." Jasmine leaned forward and said, "Grandma at home? Like, on the couch?" And I laughed and said, "Baby, we didn't have couches like yours. It was a rocking chair and a lot of towels." Andre made a face and said, "Gross." And Jasmine giggled, and for about 90 seconds I forgot that anything was wrong with anything. Then Darius said abruptly, "I'm going to pull off at this next exit. Tash, let's stop and stretch." He took the exit. It was Highway 441, a small state road. I'd never been on it. He drove for about 6 minutes past the exit, past a farm, past a field, past a little Baptist church with a plywood sign out front. There was almost nothing out there, just pine trees and heat shimmer and the occasional mailbox. He pulled into a Shell station that was sitting by itself at a crossroads. Across the street was a boarded-up barbecue place. Next door was a closed antique shop. There were 2 other cars in the lot. No people outside. "Gonna get gas and use the bathroom," Darius said. He parked at the pump. He got out. He looked at me through the back window, really looked at me for just a second, and then he walked into the station. Tasha turned around in the passenger seat for the first time the whole trip. She said, "Mom, would you mind going inside and getting some waters? For the kids? And maybe some snacks. Here." She held a $20 bill back over the seat. "Take this." "Of course, sweetheart." I took the 20. I climbed out of the 3rd row, which took me a minute because I'm not as limber as I used to be. I leaned down and kissed Jasmine on the top of her head. I winked at Andre. I said, "I'll be right back, babies." I walked across the parking lot toward the station. I didn't look back. I pushed the door open. A little bell rang. I was in the back of the store, at the cooler, picking out 2 bottles of Dasani and a Gatorade for Andre, when I heard a car engine start up outside. I didn't think anything of it. It was a gas station. Then I heard another engine, and the sound of tires moving. I walked up the aisle toward the front of the store with the waters in my arms, and I looked through the front window. The SUV was pulling away from the pump. It was pulling out of the lot. It was turning left onto Highway 441. I stood there. I actually stood there, with a Gatorade in each hand, and I watched my son's car get smaller down the road. I remember thinking very clearly, they're going to the other pump. They're turning around. He forgot something. He's coming right back. I stood at the window for maybe 4 minutes. The car didn't come back. I set the waters on the counter. I said to the young man at the register, without my voice shaking, "I am proud of this. I do not know how I did it, but my voice did not shake. I'm sorry. Could you tell me, is there another Shell station nearby? I think my ride may have pulled around to a different pump." He looked at me kindly. He was maybe 26 years old. He had a name tag that said Terry. "No, ma'am," he said. "This is the only station at this exit. The next one's about 11 miles up 441. I nodded. I said, "Thank you, baby." I picked up the waters again, because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. I walked out into the parking lot. I stood in the sun. I waited. 10 minutes, 20, 30. My phone rang in my purse. I fumbled for it. I almost dropped it. My hands were shaking now. My hands, but not my voice. Not yet. It was Tasha. I answered. "Tasha, where are you all?" "Mom." Her voice was flat, completely flat. "Mom, we're not coming back. Stopping here is requested. I'll wait for your go-ahead to continue with part 3, which will cover the full phone call with Tasha, the night at the motel with Terry, the turning point, the legal counterattack, the IRS twist, Tasha's threat, Jasmine's text message, the courtroom confrontation, and the resolution." I stood in the parking lot of that Shell station on Highway 441 with a bottle of Gatorade in each hand, and my daughter-in-law told me, in a voice so flat it sounded like a weather report, that they were leaving me there. Tasha, what are you saying to me?" "I'm saying we're not coming back, Mom. We need you to hear this. We need you to really hear it, because you haven't been hearing anything for months." "Where's Darius? Let me talk to Darius." "He's driving. He can hear me. Let me talk to my son." There was a pause. Then Darius's voice from further away, speakerphone I realized, said, "Mama, Tasha's got it. Listen to what she's saying. Listen to what she's saying." My son said that. Those words came out of my son's mouth. I walked over to the curb in front of the station because my knees had started to feel strange, and I sat down on it, right there in the sun, in my travel clothes, with 2 bottles of water in my lap. "Tasha, you need to turn around. My grandchildren are in that car, and I am on the side of a road I don't know, and you need to turn around." "Mom," she said, "the kids are fine. They're playing their iPads. They don't even know anything's happening. We'll tell them you had to go home early. We'll tell them something came up." "Tasha, what is wrong with you?" "What's wrong with me?" "Mom, what's wrong with you? You put a lien on our house. You hired a lawyer. You've been treating us like strangers for months. You went behind our backs. You blocked the sale. The sale you weren't allowed to make without telling me. It is our house. It is collateral on a loan you signed a contract for. See? That's exactly that right there. That's how you talk to us now. Like we're some kind of business deal. Like we're not family." And then she said something I want you to hear. She said, "Mom, you've become a burden. You had one job as Darius's mother, and it was to help him when he needed help. And you did, until you didn't, until you decided to play lawyer, until you decided you were smarter than us. Do you understand how humiliating that is? Do you understand what it was like for Darius to sign those papers? You treated your own son like a criminal. Tasha, where are you driving to?" "Dallas." The Gatorade slipped out of my left hand and rolled into the gutter. "Dallas, with my grandchildren." "With our children, Mom. They're not your children. You don't get to make decisions for them." "Tasha, do you have any idea what you're doing right now? Do you understand where I am? You're at a gas station. There's a person working there. You have a phone. You have a credit card. You're not a child, Mom. You're a grown woman. Figure it out." I can hear in my memory the exact sound of my own breath going in and out. I can hear a tractor trailer going past on 441. I can hear the bell on the gas station door as somebody came out with a bag of chips and didn't even look at me. I said, "Let me speak to my son." Darius's voice came back on, louder this time. He'd taken the phone off speaker, I think, and was holding it. He sounded like he'd been crying, or about to cry, but there was something underneath that, a hardness I'd never heard before in his voice, not once in 38 years. Mama? Darius, turn the car around. Mama, I can't. I've been trying to make this work for months. Tasha's been going through hell. I've been going through hell. You don't know half of it. And every time I try to talk to you, you act like we're the ones doing something wrong. You made me sign a piece of paper that let you take my house, Mama. That I let you borrow $95,000 on. It's not about the money. Darius Harold Washington, you listen to me. You turn that car around right now. I don't care what you and your wife are running from. I don't care what you have done. You turn this car around and you come get your mother off the side of this road. He was quiet. Then he said, and this is the sentence I will be carrying until the day they put me in the ground next to Harold. He said, Mama, Tasha's right. You're making me choose, and I'm choosing my wife. Go home, Mama. Sign the paperwork. Release the lien. Then we'll talk. He hung up. I sat on that curb for I don't know how long. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 40. The sun had moved. My shoulders were burning. There was a cramp starting in my left hip from sitting on concrete. I did not cry. I will tell you the truth. I did not cry because I could not figure out how to start. It was like standing in front of a house that has burned down and trying to remember where you kept the matches. My whole body had gone into a kind of smooth, cool state that I recognized from 32 years of pediatric nursing. It was the state I used to go into when a baby coded. The state where your heart keeps beating, but your hands get very quiet, and your brain starts making a list. I checked my phone. 12% battery. 2 bars of service. I opened my wallet. $43 in cash. A debit card. A credit card with a $400 limit that Harold had made me keep open since 1989 just in case. My driver's license. My hospital retirement, ID. The Mother's Day card from Darius. I put the card back. I didn't want to look at it yet. I stood up. My hips screamed at me. I walked back into the gas station. The young man behind the counter, Terry, looked up. He had a kind face. He had the kind of face you could tell had a grandmother he loved somewhere. I walked up to the counter. I put the Gatorade and the waters down. I opened my mouth, and the first 2 times I tried, no sound came out. On the 3rd try, I said, Son, I'm going to need your help. My family just left me here. He stared at me. He said, Ma'am, say that again. My son and his wife just drove away and left me in your parking lot. I think they've gone to Texas. I'm 64 years old. I'm from Atlanta. I'd like to sit down somewhere, if that's all right with you, while I figure out what I'm going to do. Terry came out from behind the counter faster than I've ever seen a man move. He put his hand under my elbow, the way you were trained to, back when young men still got trained in that kind of thing. And he walked me to a little plastic booth by the window where people ate their gas station biscuits in the morning. He eased me into the seat. Ma'am, what's your name? Joanna Washington. Miss Joanna, I'm going to get you a fresh cup of coffee. On the house. You sit there. Don't you move. He went behind the counter. He poured me a cup of coffee. He brought it over. Then he walked back behind the counter, picked up a landline phone, and made a call. I heard him say, Aunt Brenda, I need to step out for a couple hours. I'll pay back the time. It's a situation. I'll tell you when I get back. He hung up. He came back to my booth. He pulled up a plastic chair, turned it backwards, and sat down in it across from me. He said, Miss Joanna, I'm Terrence Boyd. My friends call me Terry. My mama is 61 years old and she lives in Valdosta. If my mama was in a gas station somewhere right now with no ride, I would want somebody to sit down with her and help her think. So that's what I'm going to do. Is that all right with you? I looked at that boy. I looked at that black boy, 26 years old, in a gas station polo shirt, with a name tag and a wedding band and a coffee stain on his cuff. And I started to cry. Not loud. Not the kind of crying that makes people look. Just the kind of crying that leaks out of you when the dam inside you gets too tired to hold anymore. He didn't move. He didn't touch me. He sat in his chair and let me cry. He slid a napkin across the table, and when I took it, he nodded once, like a person who had seen other people cry before and knew what was needed. When I could talk again, I told him the story. The loan, the trip, the lien, the phone call. All of it. I talked for 20 minutes, and he did not interrupt me once. When I was finished, he said, Miss Joanna, do you have a place in Atlanta to go home to? Yes, baby. Do you have family there who can come for you? My sister Ruth May was there this morning. She's driving back to Savannah today. Can you call her? Yes. My phone is it's at 10%. I got a charger behind the counter. Right here. Give me your phone. He plugged my phone in behind his register. He brought me a paper plate with a honey bun on it. He said, "You eat that. Your blood sugar's gonna drop. I know what shock looks like." He said it the way a man who'd been in the military said things, like it wasn't up for debate. While my phone charged, I called Ruth May from the landline. Terry punched the number in for me because my hands were shaking now that I had stopped being calm. Ruth May picked up on the first ring. She was already in her car, halfway back to Savannah. "Ruthie? Joe? Baby, where are you? You sound— Ruthie, they left me." "They what?" "Darius and Tasha. They left me at a gas station on Highway 441. They drove off. Ruthie, they're going to Texas." There was a silence. And then my baby sister, who was 5'2", said in the quietest voice I have ever heard her use, "Joe, do not move. Do not move 1 inch. I am turning around right now. You tell me the exit number. You tell me the cross street. I will be there in 2.5 hours. And Joanna, don't you let one more tear fall till I get there. We are going to cry together when we cry. You hear me?" I heard her. Ruth May got to that gas station in 2 hours and 11 minutes. She pulled into the parking lot with her hazard lights on, and her face looking like the face our mother used to make when somebody disrespected her children. She hugged Terry Boyd for so long he started to look embarrassed. She pressed a $100 bill into his hand, which he refused 3 times, and which she finally slid into the pocket of his polo when he wasn't looking. She told him, "Son, you remember this day. God was in your gas station today. You remember that." Terry walked us out to the car. Before I got in the passenger seat, he took my hand. He said, "Miss Joanna, whatever you do next, do it like a woman who knows what she's worth." I squeezed his hand. I said, "I will, baby. I promise." Ruth May drove me home to Atlanta. She didn't turn the radio on. She didn't try to fill the silence. Every 20 minutes or so, she'd reach over and put her hand on my arm. That was all. I slept in my own bed that night. Ruth May slept in the guest room. I didn't cry. I lay on my back and looked at the ceiling and listened to the old wooden house settle, the way it settled every night since 1992. And I thought about my husband. I said out loud to the dark room, "Harold, baby, I need you to tell me what to do." I waited. The house creaked. The refrigerator clicked on downstairs. A car went by outside. And I remembered. Not a voice, just a memory. I remembered Harold standing in our kitchen one night, maybe a year before he died, telling me about a student of his who'd gotten into trouble. He was saying, "Joe, the hardest part of loving somebody is knowing when love looks like a no instead of a yes. Most folks never learn the difference. That's why they raise grown children who never finish growing up." I sat up in bed. I turned the lamp on. I reached into the drawer of my nightstand and pulled out the little plastic laminated card that had been in there for 40 years. The card I'd made the year my mother died, with her words on it. The ones she used to say when I got sick of somebody's foolishness and didn't think I had the right to say so. "Joanna May, love does not mean letting yourself get stomped into the ground. Jesus got crucified for love, but he also flipped the tables in the temple. Know when to love soft and know when to flip the table." I read it twice. I sat there on the edge of my bed at 11:43 at night, in my nightgown, 64 years old, with my sister asleep down the hall, and I said, out loud, to my mother and to my husband and to whoever else was listening, all right, I am flipping the table." I picked up the phone. I called Gregory Foster. He picked up on the 3rd ring. His voice was thick with sleep. "Joe? Greg, I am sorry for the hour, but I need you to do 4 things starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and I need you to clear your calendar to do them. Can you do that for me?" I could hear him sitting up in bed. "Joanna, baby, tell me what happened." "I'll tell you at 9. I need you to say yes first. Can you give me the day?" Gregory Foster said without hesitating. "Joe, I have been waiting for this phone call since Harold died. Yes, the whole day is yours. I want to be honest about something. I am not a vindictive woman. I have never been. I spent 32 years of my life holding sick children and comforting scared parents, and I did not walk out of that career with a hunger for revenge. What I walked out of it with was something quieter. I walked out of it knowing that the thing most people call fighting back is actually just documentation. It is sitting down with a pen and a piece of paper and writing the truth down in the right order. That is what I did that Monday morning in Gregory Foster's office. Ruth May came with me. She refused to go back to Savannah until, quote, "This whole thing is in the ground, Joe." She sat in the corner of Gregory's office with a cup of coffee, and she did not say one word for 3 hours. She just watched. I walked Gregory through everything. The loan, the Turks and Caicos trip, the silk scarf, the Rolex, the envelope from the IRS, the listing on the house, the missed birthdays, the phone call on the highway. Then I laid out what I wanted. I wanted 4 things. I wrote them on Gregory's legal pad myself, in my own handwriting. 1. File with the Cobb County Court to enforce the lien immediately. Accelerate the full $95,000 due. Pull the listing down officially. Block any attempted sale or refinance of the house. 2. Freeze my own finances. Change every password. Close the old joint checking account Darius was still a signatory on from when I'd added him 5 years earlier for emergencies. Move my savings and my 401k into a new institution. Move the remaining $80,000 of Harold's life insurance into a trust that only Gregory and I could touch. 3. Rewrite my will. The house in Kirkwood, the life insurance, the retirement, the hydrangeas, the wedding silver, all of it. Not to Darius, not $1. 4. Hire an investigator, someone Gregory trusted. I wanted to know what Darius and Tasha were really running from, because the math did not math. $95,000 does not buy Turks and Caicos, a Rolex, a Dallas relocation, and a listed house all in the same season. There was something else. I could feel it, and I wanted to know what it was before I walked into any courtroom. Gregory looked up from the legal pad. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Joe, I want to ask you one question, and I want you to answer me honestly. When all of this shakes out, and we get to the end of it, what outcome are you after? Because that's going to shape how I run this. Are you trying to put Darius in jail? Are you trying to ruin him? Are you trying to get your money back? What is this for? For you?" I had been thinking about this question all night. I said, "Gregory, I am not trying to put my son in jail. I am not trying to ruin him. I am trying to do 3 things. I want my money back so I can redirect it to the people who actually love me. I want my grandchildren to have something in writing that says their grandmother saw them and fought for them. And I want Darius and Tasha to run into a wall that is so high and so firm that for the rest of their lives, whenever either of them thinks about treating an old black woman like a wallet, they remember what happened when they tried it with me." Gregory set down his pen. He said, "Joanna, I want you to know something. Harold would be proud of you today. He would be so, so proud of you." Ruth May spoke up from her corner for the first time. She said, "About time." Things moved fast after that. By Tuesday afternoon, Gregory had filed the acceleration motion in Cobb County. The listing on the house came down within 48 hours, exactly as he'd predicted. The young real estate agent in the headshot, Ashley, called Tasha in a panic. By Wednesday, every one of my accounts had been moved, frozen, reopened, or retitled. By Friday, I had a new will, signed, witnessed, and filed. Every single beneficiary line had been rewritten. And Monday of the following week, Gregory walked into my living room with a thin brown folder in his hand and a face I had never seen him wear before. He sat down on my couch. He said, "Joanna, the investigator came back. I want you to sit down for this one." I was already sitting down. I said, "Tell me, Greg." He opened the folder. The $95,000 had never been about the mortgage. Tasha had not been laid off. She had been working the whole time. In fact, a new commission had just come through in February. Their mortgage had never been delinquent. Not for one day. What Darius and Tasha had been hiding was a $312,000 debt to the IRS. Tasha had been underreporting income from her real estate commissions for 4 years. She'd been running a second stream through a side LLC that she had never declared. The IRS had noticed. They had sent a formal notice in January. By March, they had opened a criminal inquiry because the amount involved had crossed the threshold where they don't just want the money, they want a conviction. My $95,000 had been the first piece of a settlement offer Tasha's tax attorney had negotiated to keep her out of criminal court. The rest of it was going to come from the sale of the house. That was why the lien was a problem. That was why they had to get me to sign it away. That was why Dallas. Tasha's brother lived in Dallas. They were going to regroup there, sell the house out from under me using some kind of fraudulent title workaround their agent at Tasha's firm had been trying to set up, and pay the IRS before the criminal case moved forward. Gregory said, "There's one more thing, Joe, and I am sorry to be the one to tell you." He showed me a statement. A 529 college savings plan, opened in Jasmine's name in 2014 and in Andre's name in 2018, funded by me and Harold, then by me alone after he died. Every birthday, every Christmas, $38,000 in Jasmine's, $19,000 in Andre's, $57,000 total that me and my dead husband had put away for our grandchildren's education. In May, Tasha had used her authority as custodian on the accounts to liquidate them both. She had withdrawn $40,000 between the two accounts, the maximum the IRS would allow without immediate additional penalties, and rolled it into their defense fund. My grandchildren's college money. I sat on my own couch in my own living room, with Harold's hydrangeas visible through the front window, and I did something I had not done, not once, in all of this. I screamed. It came out of me like a thing I had been saving. I screamed into a couch cushion, and Gregory did not try to stop me. Ruth May came running from the kitchen, and she sat down next to me, and she held me while I screamed, and when I was done, she said quietly, "We are not done yet, Joe. We are a long way from done." I wiped my face. I stood up. I straightened my sweater. I said, "They are not going to touch those babies again. Not one more dollar. Not one more lie." Gregory nodded. He said, "Then let's go finish this." 2 days after I filed the acceleration motion, Tasha showed up at my house. It was a Thursday. Around 4 in the afternoon, she was alone. The doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. I saw her standing there in her real estate blazer, holding a manila folder, and I felt my stomach tighten. I picked up my phone. I opened the voice recorder app. I pressed record. I slid the phone into the front pocket of my house dress. I opened the door. I did not invite her in. Tasha said, "Mom, can we talk?" I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door closed behind me. Deborah's porch light was on next door. She was home, and I wanted Tasha to know she was home. "You can say whatever you need to say right here, Tasha." She was not crying. She was not apologetic. She was as composed as a woman at a closing. "Mom, I need you to release the lien. Today. I need you to call your lawyer and tell him to withdraw the motion." "No. Mom, listen to me. If you don't do this, if you don't release it, we are going to file a report with DFCS. We're going to say that you're not safe around the children, that you've been confused, that you've been giving the kids expired food, that you fell at Easter and didn't tell anyone, that Jasmine told us she didn't feel safe in your house. None of that is true. It doesn't have to be true, Mom. It just has to be reported. You know how long it takes to investigate something like that? 6 months. 12. In the meantime, you don't see them. Not one time. Not a phone call. Not a FaceTime. Not a birthday. If you want to keep being in those children's lives, you release that lien by 5 p.m. tomorrow." I stood on my own front porch. The porch Harold built me a ramp onto when he knew he might not be around to hold my arm when I got older, and I looked at my daughter-in-law. I said very quietly, "Tasha, are you finished?" "Mom, I asked you a question, young lady. Are you finished?" Yes, I'm finished." "Good. Now you listen to me. Are you listening?" "Yes." "Baby, I spent 32 years of my life writing nursing notes in a pediatric ward in a southern hospital where my notes were the only thing standing between me and a lawsuit every single shift. I wrote down every breath, every temperature, every medication, every parent's complaint, every doctor's order. I wrote down the color of children's fingernails. I wrote down the smell of their breath. I wrote down everything. Documentation is my first language. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?" She said nothing. "I have been documenting you, Tasha, since April. I have a list. I have an envelope at Miss Deborah's house with every dollar I've ever given you and my son. I have a folder at my attorney's office with your Instagram posts, your cell phone bills, your real estate filings, your IRS correspondence, and the name of the agent at your firm who listed your house without clearing it with me. I know about the LLC. I know about Dallas. I know about the college funds. I know what you are running from. And I have right now, in the pocket of this old lady house dress, A recording of every single word you just said on my porch. So let me explain to you, one more time, how this is going to go. Her face had gone a strange shade of pale under her makeup. You are going to sell that house. You are going to pay me back every dollar of the $95,000 plus Gregory's fees. Out of that sale, you are also going to restore, down to the last dollar, the $57,000 of my grandchildren's college money that you stole from them. I have rewritten my will. Darius is not in it. You are not in it. And if either of you ever files a single false report with DFCS or any other state agency about me being unsafe around my grandchildren, my attorney will take the recording I just made, the one with your voice, not mine, and he will file it as evidence of extortion, fraud, and conspiracy. Do you understand me, baby? Mom, I said, do you understand me? Yes. Then get off my porch, and don't you ever come back here unless I invite you. And Tasha, one more thing. What? I looked her dead in the eye. You underestimated me, baby. A whole lot of people in my life have underestimated me. Most of them are dead now. You take that however you want. She walked to her car. She got in. Her hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I stood on the porch until she was off my street. Then I went inside. I locked the door. I emailed the recording to Gregory Foster. I sat down at my kitchen table, and I let myself shake. That night at 10:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text message from a number I did not recognize. A 678 area code. I opened it. Grandma, it's Jasmine. I'm using Dad's old iPad. He thinks it's dead. I know everything. I heard them talking. I heard Mom say you were trying to ruin us, and I heard Dad say you left them no choice. But Grandma, I know you didn't. I know how you are. Andre and me don't want to go to Dallas. We want to stay with you. Please don't believe what they say about you. I am so sorry he is your son. I love you. Please write back, but don't tell them I have this iPad. Jasmine. I sat on my couch. I read it 4 times. Then, and only then, did I cry the way you cry when you think nobody is coming to get you. And then somebody does. I cried for a long time. Ruth May came out of the guest room in her robe, and I showed her the phone, and she covered her mouth with her hand, and then she went back to the guest room, and I could hear her, through the wall, crying too. I wrote back. It took me 20 minutes to write 3 sentences. Baby, Grandma loves you. Grandma has always loved you, and I'm never going anywhere. Keep this iPad safe. Grandma is not the problem, and Grandma is not going anywhere. Kiss Andre for me. Jasmine wrote back, Okay, Grandma, I won't tell. I love you. I slept that night with my phone under my pillow for the first time in my life. The hearing happened on a Tuesday in early September. Fulton County, a small settlement conference. Gregory had arranged it so it wasn't a public courtroom, just a conference room with a mediator, their lawyer, my lawyer, and the 2 of them. Darius and Tasha walked in looking like people who had not slept in 3 weeks. Tasha had lost weight. Darius wouldn't look at me. Their lawyer was a white man in his 40s who looked like he'd taken the case as a favor. Gregory had structured the settlement simply. They sold the house. They paid me back the $95,000. They restored $57,000 into 2 new 529 accounts for my grandchildren, under my name as custodian, not theirs, never theirs again. They covered Gregory's fees, and in return I agreed not to pursue criminal charges for the fraudulent loan application. They agreed to all of it. They had no choice. Tasha's IRS attorney had already told them the lien was unbreakable. When the papers had been signed, the mediator said, Mrs. Washington, is there anything you'd like to say to your son before we conclude? Darius's head came up for the first time all morning. I stood up. I buttoned the jacket of the navy suit I had worn to Harold's funeral. I put my hands on the back of my chair. I said 3 things. The first was for Darius. I said, Darius, when you were 9 years old, you told me you were going to buy me a big house one day, so I'd never have to worry about anything. I never needed you to buy me a house. What I needed you to remember is that I was the one who sat up with you when you couldn't breathe. You forgot that. Not me. He dropped his head. The second was for Tasha. I said, Tasha, you called me a burden on that highway. Well, baby, this burden had a lawyer. This burden had evidence. This burden had 32 years of documenting difficult cases and exactly 1 daughter-in-law who thought an older black woman couldn't read a contract. Don't you ever, not for the rest of your life, underestimate a black woman who put herself through Spelman on a nurse's overtime. She did not look up. The third was for both of them. I said, and about Jasmine and Andre. Those children are not leverage. They are not bargaining chips. They are not a tool you get to use when you run out of other tools. They are two small human beings, and they are more mine than you understand, and they are more their own than either of you has ever been willing to see. When you figure out the difference between loving a child and using a child, you can pick up the phone and call me. Not before. I picked up my purse. I walked out of that conference room without looking back. Ruth May was waiting for me in the lobby. She took my hand. We walked out into the Atlanta sun together. It has been 8 months since that hearing. I want to tell you what my life looks like now, because I know, if you are listening to me, you are probably wondering the same thing I would wonder. You are probably thinking, yes, Joanna, but then what? Then what did the quiet mornings look like? Then what did Sunday feel like? I will tell you. The house on Smyrna sold in October for $604,000. Darius and Tasha paid me back every penny I was owed. The $57,000 went into new 529 plans for Jasmine and Andre, plans I control alone. They moved to Dallas to a small rented house. Tasha is on a payment plan with the IRS. Darius is still working, still drawing a salary, still paying what they owe. I took the $95,000 they paid me back, and I gave it away. $20,000 to Ebenezer Baptist, because the roof needed work, and Pastor Brooks had stood by me when it mattered. $15,000 to Spelman College for a small annual scholarship in my mother's name. The Beulah May Carter Nursing Scholarship, for a black woman student who is the first in her family to attend. $10,000 to Terrence Boyd, who used it to go back to school and get his EMT certification, which he has now, and which he sends me pictures of his patches from. The rest went into my own retirement, where it should have stayed in the first place. Ruth May and I went to Ghana in the spring. It was the first time either of us had ever left the country. She cried when we landed. I cried when we left. I had not known, at 64 years old, that my body was still capable of that kind of joy. Darius calls me about once a month now. I answer. I am polite. I ask about the children. I do not tell him I love him, and I do not say I don't. He has not apologized. Not really. Once, about 4 months in, he said, "Mama, I know we did you wrong." That is all he has said. I said, "Yes, baby, you did." And then we talked about the weather. I have not spoken to Tasha since the hearing. I do not expect to. Jasmine and Andre came to stay with me for 6 weeks this past summer. I flew to Dallas and picked them up myself. Tasha met me at the door and did not look me in the eye. Darius carried their bags to the car. The children hugged me so hard I almost fell down. Jasmine is 12 now. She has started calling me on her own phone every Sunday. Andre is 8. He told me, the second night he was with me, at the dinner table in my kitchen, "Grandma, I'm glad you didn't let them make you go away." I told him I wasn't going anywhere. I told him grandmas like me don't go away. Last Sunday, Pastor Brooks asked me if I would come up and give a testimony. I hadn't been up in front of the church in years. I have always been a pew woman. But I said yes. I said yes because I thought maybe there was a woman sitting in that sanctuary who was where I had been 18 months earlier, and maybe she needed to hear what I had learned. I stood at the pulpit. I looked out at the third pew on the left, on the aisle, the pew that used to be mine and Harold's, where Deborah was now sitting. I looked at Pastor Brooks, who nodded at me, and I said this. I said, "Church, I used to think that family was the people you were born to. I don't think that anymore. I think family is the people who choose you and the people you choose back. Harold chose me. Ruth May chose me. Miss Deborah chose me. My grandbabies chose me. A young man named Terrence in a gas station off of Highway 441 who didn't know me from Eve chose me. On the same afternoon, my own son chose to drive away. I am 64 years old. I have a lot of love left in me, but I am not spending any more of it on people who treat my love like a weakness. I am spending it on people who treat it like a blessing. And church, if there's a woman sitting in here today who knows what I am talking about, who has been pouring herself out into somebody who keeps coming back with a bigger cup, I want to say this to you, and I want you to hear me. Jesus loves you too much to watch you die a little bit every day so you can keep a person alive who isn't loving you back. That is not what he died for. That is not what your mama raised you for. The congregation stood up. I saw Pastor Brooks wiping his eyes. Deborah had her hand over her mouth. Ruth May, who had driven up from Savannah just to hear me speak, was crying in the front row. I stepped down from the pulpit. I went back to my own pew, And I sat down, not next to the ghost of my husband, but just in my own seat as myself. And I listened to the choir sing "His Eye is on the Sparrow," the same song I had sung to my son 45 years earlier when he was a little boy who couldn't breathe. I listened to it as a free woman. If you are still here, listening to this old woman, I want to tell you one last thing. I am not a pastor. I am not a therapist. I am not a lawyer. I am a retired pediatric nurse with a house in Kirkwood, 2 grandbabies who call me every Sunday, 1 sister who shows up when I call her, a best friend next door, and a faith that has held me up through more than I ever thought it would have to hold me up through. But here is what 32 years of nursing taught me, and what the last 18 months have taught me again, and what I want to leave with you before you close this video and go back to your own kitchen. Love is not the same as access. You can love somebody deeply from far away. You can love somebody while you are standing on the other side of a closed door. You can love somebody and still be the one who locked the door. Your house is your house. Your money is your money. Your body is your body. Your time is your time. Your peace is your peace. None of those things are public property, not even for the people who came out of your own body. Love hard, love generous, love Jesus on the cross hard if you want. But love with your eyes open. And if somebody you love, even your own blood, ever leaves you on some highway, somewhere, in some season of your life, don't chase the car. Walk toward yourself.